Hello and welcome to another episode of Attacking Third, a CBS Sports soccer podcast. I'm Sandra Herrera, lead NWSL writer for CBS Sports, joined today as always by my colleague and co-host, Lisa Roman, NWSL analyst and broadcaster. On today's episode, we have a special edition interview for everyone ahead of the NWSL Championship. But first, a quick reminder to follow us on Twitter at Attacking Third. Also, you can head on over to our YouTube page so you never miss a thing. Hit subscribe at youtube.com/Attacking Third. On today's episode, we are joined by Andi Sullivan, Washington Spirit midfielder and U.S. Women's National Team midfielder and NWSL Championship bound. How are you doing today, Andi Sullivan? Welcome to the show.
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
We're excited to sit down and chat a little bit with you about all things Washington Spirit, about all things championship final. First of all, congratulations are in order, making it through 2 rounds of playoffs and now headed to the championship final. Just to sum things up, how would you sum up this season? Would you use one word? Would you use one sentence? Would you use one paragraph? Hit me and why.
Oh, man. I don't think you can sum it all up. Madness, maybe.
That's a good word.
Yeah, that would be my choice. Also, what part of the season do you want to talk about? But yeah, I think madness would be my choice.
That's a good one.
I honestly love that. I love that you couldn't just use one word, but hey, you guys made it. You made it to the championship, and not just by defeating one team, but 2 teams, quarterfinals and then the semifinal to get here. This expanded playoff type format from the season with a quarterfinals thrown into that mix. How did Washington Spirit, your team, approach this extra match before the final this season?
Well, I think it was incredible to even make playoffs, and it was so exciting leading into playoffs. And I think that just speaks volumes about the league and about so many teams, every team. So for us, it was just kind of stay on the course, and every game leading for us in that second chunk of the season felt like a playoff game. So for us, and that's the margin with a lot of teams in the league, was one result, a few goals here and there. It was so tight. So I feel like we were really prepared for the playoff push. And thinking back on it, I'm glad that we didn't have a bye, because it just kept our rhythm going, and we didn't have any time to take our foot off the gas. And I think that played off for us in the end.
Let's stick with that energy a little bit, but in terms of the actual regular season, it was a very, very tight competitive season in NWSL this year, coming down to the wire in that final week where a lot of teams needed that final week to sort of see whether they were in or whether they were out. And now it's going to be the number 3 seed versus the number 4 seed for the championship title. Tight season, most competitive all time. A lot of scenarios coming down to the final week of NWSL regular season, teams figuring out whether they were going to be in or out of the playoffs this year. For you yourself, someone who's been with one team specifically since you've been drafted, the Spirit, what have you yourself learned about the competition of the league in this season in particular?
Good question. I'm curious if I learned this in this season, but I think what's true is just you can't take any play off, or you can't take any opponent for granted. And I think that's been true every year that I've been in the league. But this is just one of the first times I've been on a more successful side of it. And that's definitely more enjoyable and more fun. So maybe that's something I've learned. Wow. That's kind of all I have on that. I'll have to think a little bit more if I can think of something unique.
That's okay. Yeah, that's okay. It was tight. It came down to it, and you did allude to that. But last game, defeated OL Reign in the semis, advancing to the final. Congrats. And then during that match, it felt like it had really just started. The first whistle had just been blown, and before we knew it, OL Reign was on the board. Washington, you were down 1-0 at that point, about 4 minutes into the match. At that point, what did you say to your team at that point in the game?
My first thought was, good thing it happened early. We have time to fix it. And it was just like, no, I wasn't. Obviously I was a little bummed, but I was like, oh, we're good. Like in this weird way, not in a cocky way, but I was like, it's early, we have time. And I don't know if I felt that way before when getting scored on. And it was a cool way to feel, to just keep a level head towards it. I felt like as long as we reset and didn't let them get another one, then we were good. And I had full confidence in us to be able to come back with that much time left in the game.
It almost sort of feels like that's also been a theme in these playoffs. Like confidence has absolutely been key as they progressed. For the Spirit, you all are facing Chicago Red Stars in the championship final, and you've played them a number of times during the regular season. Weren't able to necessarily get the best of them, but there's, along with the confidence aspect of it, there's another bit of a reoccurring theme. We've spoke with a couple of your teammates already on the show with Ashley Hatch and Tegan McGrady, and they both echoed similar sentiment that once playoffs happen, a little bit of like a reset button is hit. So in terms of your perspective, how will this game possibly be different going up against the Red Stars versus, in the regular season for you guys?
I think when we played the Red Stars, we played them a lot of times in a short period of time and very early in the season. And I feel like a lot has changed since then. Obviously, they've gotten stronger as well, but I think we've kind of hit our stride. So I think the game will be totally different than the past matchups. But I think it's going to be a really good game. And in terms of reset, yeah, it's just like you have nothing to lose. So let's do it. And I think that will provide for a very entertaining final. But I think they're going to be very tough to break down. So we're really going to need to be sharp to pull anything off.
I mean, this season, it's a lot of teams are tough to break down. And as you mentioned, your team in particular, you've hit your stride. You guys are on this rhythm and on this path of consistency. What's been the most consistent thing you've seen from your team, especially over the last few weeks?
I think what's been really consistent for us is just our togetherness and being able to organize and communicate and be a little bit more simplistic. I think that's really helped us come together. There's kind of we have the ability to be fluid and flexible, but there's also less complication. And I think that makes everyone feel more connected, and it helps make problems easier to solve. And I think we're communicating through those problems and on the fly. And like I said, kind of that steady composure that we can work through those things just together and on the fly has been consistent, because we've had a lot of different challenges in all these massive matches. It's not like we've, hit our stride and it's been easy. I think we've done that by overcoming a lot of things just by working through conflict.
A lot of consistency, especially from the forwards, honestly, on your team, the players that play in front of you, some top-notch goal scorers, if you will.
Studs.
Ashley Hatch, Golden Boot leader. Trinity Rodman, huge candidate for Rookie of the Year. Ashley Sanchez, showing off in that OL Reign match with that cheeky goal that she chipped over, the game winner nonetheless. But you've been watching these forwards all season, growing, finding that consistency. What have you learned about your forwards this year?
Like I said, they're studs. That's pretty much what I've learned. It's been cool to see their relationships build. And I would throw Tara into that mix. I would throw Anna Helferty into that mix. Their ability to combine and create and do crazy stuff that no one's expecting, but they have this kind of synergy, and that's fun to watch from behind. I say, you guys go, do your thing. And yeah, I think that they've scored some really incredible goals, but made them look very easy. And I think that's not an easy thing to do. So it's been very fun to play with all of them.
I think maybe just to start, before we started getting to this fun segment, we always try to close our episodes with a little bit of a fun segment before we hop into that. Another thing that sort of has come up as we've had conversations with some of your teammates on the Spirit, along with the confidence, right, along with the growth, is something like the resiliency that has come up a lot of this team. And obviously that has also been a theme that this team has had to deal with throughout this year, specifically with things off of the pitch. How are you sort of feeling? You've been referred to a lot as one of the leaders on this team, and your teammates have mentioned that you have been someone that they have gone to in terms of leaning on someone for that type of leadership. What's your perspective of this team right now, and sort of everything that you've all sort of had to go through on versus off the pitch?
Yeah, I think it's been a difficult year for every single player and every single team in the league. And I think that's something that has been like emotional. But I also feel very inspired by my teammates and by players across the league. And I think that leadership wise, I feel like I've, in a weird way, like lightened up a little bit. And with our team, I think that was actually, maybe they would disagree. So maybe, I don't know. I don't want to say that. And they're all thinking, no, you haven't. So we'll have to see their reactions to that actually. But I think that I kind of feel now like nothing surprises me anymore. I don't know if that's a good thing or bad thing. And so just to be able to take things as they come and be available to listen and kind of bounce ideas off people and empower players to speak up, whether that's something on the field, off the field, and just try and help them get their ideas across is kind of what I've been doing recently, I think. And it's been very different, but I think it's, like I said, I think it's working for the group, and I'm flattered that they mention me in that way. I also rely very heavily on Tori Huster and Aubrey Bledsoe. I don't think there's a single thing that I do without checking with them and getting their perspectives on things. And I think the three of us complement each other really well. And that I would give them way more credit than I would give myself.
This year, so many complications and so many different adversity hoops that you and your team have had to jump through. How has your relationship with Tori Huster and Aubrey Bledsoe strengthened this year?
I think, I mean, it was pretty strong already. I think also starting off this season obviously we're still in the pandemic, but being a little more isolated, and also us being a nomadic team without really a home base and a locker room, I think there were things that we weren't like communicating well enough about, or we would communicate and then we wouldn't have the capacity to like execute something, whether that was, mental, physical, emotional. And I think through some of the, I don't know what word you want to use, issues or anything, I don't know. We've definitely gotten stronger, just communicating more frequently, bouncing more ideas off of each other, and really reflected on how we could have helped sooner. And that's a big part of it. And what things that we could have done differently, or how we were affected by things that we didn't even realize. And I think giving each other kind of feedback, but also like grace, and we've really like learned from each other a lot. And I couldn't respect them more as people. And you get to know someone pretty well when you're dealing with things like that. So
the growth has been it's certainly been something to witness as we've sort of been doing our due diligence and trying to cover the league and talk to the players throughout this time. With looking ahead into this weekend to sort of close things out, and I'm a little curious to maybe is how you'll answer, because we've pitched some of these questions to some of your teammates as well. With the expanded format, there's an extra game to prepare for. So, and this is the first year that there was a quarterfinal and then semifinal, and now you're all finding yourself preparing for a championship final. So within these type of big game scenarios throughout these last few weeks, are you the type of person within your preparations that you find yourself that maybe you have to have like a go-to pregame meal or postgame meal, or a type of snack that you have that you absolutely have to have as part of your process? And what is it and why?
I would say I'm not like an absolute must-have of anything, because I don't want to be superstitious and I don't want to rely on something that I can't control necessarily, like especially if you're on the road. But I have preferences for sure, and pregame pancakes are always a good plan. Post game,
I have to ask. Pregame pancakes even for like a 7:00 kickoff?
Yeah.
Okay. Are they dinner pancakes, or is it like the morning you're still having the pancakes?
If I'm gonna have pancakes for my pregame meal, then I won't have pancakes in the morning.
Okay, so pancakes any time of day,
like
all the time.
Yeah, there's kind of a system, I guess.
I love it.
Yeah, pancakes.
I love that. I feel like the pancake in general is kind of underrated when it comes to like a process of like training or preparing for big games of any sort. I also love the mention of like not wanting to lean into too heavily of something for like not fear or like whatever, wanting to like lean into a superstition of like becoming that type of player. You're not the first player to mention that on this show either. So I kind of love that angle as well. I want to thank everybody for listening today. It's been a delight chatting with you, Andi Sullivan. We want to thank you for joining us. Congrats once again on making it to the NWSL Championship, and good luck. A reminder to all our listeners to catch Andi Sullivan and the Washington Spirit against Chicago Red Stars as they battle for the title on Saturday, November 20th. Coverage starts at 11:30 a.m. on Paramount Plus. And Lisa and I will be back Friday with an NWSL Championship preview. For Sandra, Herrera, Lisa Roman, and Andi Sullivan, this was Attacking Third.